It didn't take too long before Double D, or Ed with two D's, joined the rest of the neighborhood. He was the child of two highly controlling professionals in the age of greed that, despite their constant absence, dominated his life. As such, Double D became quite the intellectual and a rather meek and shy figure. Always the curious type, he loved to experiment when given the time away from school and the constant chores of his parents. However, in 1986, Double D died at school in a dodgeball game where he was hit in the temple with a dodgeball, fell back, and broke his skull. Doctors tried all they could to save his life from this imminent death, even resorting to going into the brain and trying to fix it. However, it was all in vain. Double D died in the hospital a few days later, or a few hours later. Even in the afterlife, he still shows his fear of the game dodgeball and wears a hat to cover the hideous scar of his operations. Double D also continued to follow the written order of his parents long after his death. Kevin was the next to join the group. He was born on the day of Double D's death, and is in many ways his polar opposite. Kevin came from a broken home and developed a bold personality. In life, he was cynical and angry, and took it out on many of the other children. His abusive father would rarely pay him any attention in life, and would end up bringing about the end of it. In a drunken rage, his father beat Kevin to death after Kevin took an attempt to stand up to him. He died on the way to the hospital in the winter of 1999, and his father was sent to prison for the rest of his life and sentenced to death. In the afterlife, Kevin changed his perspective to the opposite of what his life really was, with a distant father who would shower him with gifts. However, he continued to maintain his bullying even in death. Jimmy was the last to come to the cul-de-sac. He died in 2000, the year of my birth. Not long after moving into the house that Kevin's father had once lived in, he had leukemia. He had a fatal disease. Since he was barely old enough to walk, as such, he was always a very sickly child, and due to his overprotective parents, he never really got to be around other children. He lived his days out in a small bedroom, completely neglected by the outside world. Jimmy lingered for quite some time in a state of near death, when he finally was caved in and no longer suffered his lifelong illness. The Kankers sisters were different from any other denizens of the cul-de-sac. They were never of the earthly plane of existence. Instead, they are the children of demons, and not too dissimilar from the succubi of the human lore. They seem to possess abilities impossible by the standards of the others, such as the ability to appear anywhere, nearly anywhere, instantly. They were sent from hell to torment the already tortured souls of the neighborhood. Surprisingly, they are attracted to the Eds for unknown reasons. Although it is speculated that they are the weakest, willed members of the neighborhood, and they are seen as easy targets by them. Despite that, they are universally loathed and often feared by everyone, including the Eds. Now, why? If you're still watching, then I just want you to know that I only hope that the Eds and everyone else live up to their expectations of life. Being at the cul-de-sac, away from their horrible and deceitful lives. I think that they would prefer the cul-de-sac over their own real lives on Earth. And now, I think they're happy.